So this is the Mobvoi TicWatch Pro 5 Enduro, and it's been over a year since the original TicWatch Pro 5 came out, and now they've refreshed it with the Enduro version. Is there much of a difference? I'm actually not quite sure. I do have the original one strapped onto my wrist right now, so we'll be doing an unboxing, also a quick comparison to the original, just to see if there's any major differences, and then lastly, just giving you my first impressions / review after a few weeks of usage. Now, full disclaimer, Mobvoi did provide a sample, so they did send this out for me to check out, but this whole video is made by me. There is no edits, no reviews, no compensation by Mobvoi themselves, except for just providing a sample. So without further ado, let's talk about it. So looking at the box real quick, you have the watch itself right here. It comes in a black colorway. You also have the TicWatch Pro 5 Enduro naming right here. It is a Wear OS watch only, so it's only compatible with Android devices. Google Wallet, Google Play compatible there. And here you see some of the specs that are available on this watch. The main notable difference here that I noticed right away compared to the previous TicWatch Pro 5 is the fact that it has sapphire crystal instead of corner gorilla glass for the display material. So that means it should be a little bit stronger when it comes to scratches and just shattered resistance. But other than that, nothing else to really talk about here. Let's just go ahead and open this up. So you're provided with the watch right on top, and then below it, you should have a charging cable. So this does still use the same exact charger, USB-A on one end, and then your pin proprietary connector on the other end. Then you get a quick guide as well as some product safety info. So it's pretty standard unboxing as well as pretty much the same as it was with the previous TicWatch Pro 5. And you'll notice that it does only come in one size. So you only get one band with the TicWatch Pro 5, but you can swap these out with a different band if you want to. So you could use your previous TicWatch Pro 5 bands if you have the previous one and want to use the previous bands, you can switch it out. So the first thing I'm noticing here that's different compared to last year's TicWatch Pro 5 is the band that comes with it. This band feels a lot better. It feels thicker. It's got a bit of a rigid bump to it. It also has an aero texture here. It just doesn't feel as cheap compared to the previous version. This just felt like a cheap silicone band that probably costs like $5 to sell and manufacture. So this band was not that great on the TicWatch Pro 5. And this new band, this actually feels pretty decent and looks and compares pretty similarly to, like, say, the Galaxy Watch, the Apple Watch, and even the Pixel Watch that I have right here. The band definitely is improved on the Enduro version. Now, of course, you can swap these out. I forget what exact millimeter size you get, but here's the millimeter size, so you can swap them out with a third-party band if you want to do that. I'm also noticing that the buttons are actually just a little bit bigger, so the crown itself is definitely a bit wider. Same with the button. It's a bit bigger compared to the previous watch. So if it focuses up there, you can see that the crown and the button itself are just a bit bigger on the Enduro version. The last thing I'm noticing here is that the Enduro does have the pattern flipped on the bezel. So now the very top is just a glossy finish, and on the sides you have a pattern. It kind of looks like the arrows on the band itself. The previous version had a pattern as well, but this was on the very top of the bezel, and on the side it was just a glossy finish. And the Enduro does feel a little bit heavier, so I brought out my scale to see if there is a weight difference. So with the new band and the new watch, it comes in at around 75 grams. And then the previous version with its stock band comes in at around 58, 59 grams. So you can see it is much heavier compared to the previous version. But I do want to see how it weighs just without any band on it itself, because of course, like I said, you can swap these bands out. So seeing how much just the watch itself weighs, let's find out. So without the band, the Enduro weighs just about 45 grams. And the previous version, this one weighs just about 45 grams. So actually the band seems to be the one adding the extra weight. So the new one weighs 30 grams. And then the previous one only weighs 20 grams. So there you go. So the band does make a bit of a difference here when it comes to the added weight. And just the watch itself is not that big of a difference. So 44.4 exactly versus 44.9. So yeah, not a massive difference actually. So it was the band that was making it feel a bit heavier. But other than that, you can see pretty much exactly the same as far as the overall design. You do have the same sensors, the same plastic material on the back here, same pin connectors. Even though, like I said, the sizing of the buttons themselves are different, you're pretty much the exact same placement and functionality. Same size display, coming in at around 47 millimeters. So if you are a fan of big watches, then these are on the bigger side. So maybe people with smaller wrists may not want to look into any of the TicWatch Pro 5s just because they are on the slightly bigger side. As you can see, comparing it to the Pixel Watch 2 here, there is a massive difference in the display size. Personally, I may not have the biggest wrist, but I like the bigger display because it makes it a lot easier to read text on these smaller screens here. And you do get this little plastic protector when you first unboxing it. So removing that now showcases the full cleanliness of the display. This is, like I said, the sapphire crystal display versus a Corning Gorilla Glass display on the TicWatch Pro 5. So the Enduro does have a slightly newer and improved material being used. Now let's see if there's any juice on here. I'll go ahead and set it up and see what's new. Setting up the watch is actually pretty simple. You just have to download the Mobvoi Health application on your phone. And then you should be able to just add a device and it should pair it pretty easily. Going through the setup process is pretty simple as well. You just gotta log into your Google account and accept a couple of settings and stuff. So I'll see you guys at the end of the setup process. All right, so I got them both set up now. The Mobvoi TicWatch Pro 5 Enduro on the right-hand side, and then just the standard version, the original version, on the left-hand side here. Can you tell a big difference from afar? Likely not. You can see both of them have the same ultra low power display, and then when you double tap them or wake them and turn them on, you get access to the actual OLED display. And both of them have the exact same software functionality with Wear OS. Swiping right or left gives you access to your tiles, and then swiping up will give you access to your notifications. Swiping down will give you access to your quick settings. Navigation is the same, so if you want to go to your recent applications, you can click this button over here. It'll take you to your most recent applications that you had open, and you can swap between them multitasking. If you double click it, it should take you to the wallet. And then if you click the crown itself, it should take you back home. And if you're back home, clicking on the crown again will take you to all of your applications here. And if you double tap the crown, this will swap you between your last two used applications. So as you can see, I had the wallet and the Tic Exercise application open on both of them. So double tapping on the crown here swaps me between both of those applications. I am curious to see if they're running the exact same software information. So let's go down to About Watch here, the system. So you can see TicWatch Pro 5, Wear OS 3.5, and Wear OS 3.5 on the Enduro as well. So they seem to be running the exact same software. So there shouldn't be a massive difference here when it comes to the software experience. But you can obviously see that Mobvoi is behind in the Wear OS version. I think the current version is Wear OS 4.0, and Wear OS 5.0 is imminent to come out pretty soon. So they are quite a bit behind when it comes to the general Wear OS version. So one thing I'm noticing here is that Tic Exercise is a bit different here. So there may be some software differences here. So let's go ahead and look at more. So just by design, UI design here, it does look different. And the TicWatch Pro 5 is not being responsive right now. All right, there we go. Oh, yeah, there is a bit of a difference here in the UI design, at least for this application. So it looks like it's more modernized in my opinion. Oh, they grouped them. Interesting. So the Tic Exercise app now has them grouped, potentially maybe more type of exercises you can pick: scrambler, skiing, rowing, CrossFit, tennis, badminton, soccer, football. Oh, they renamed it. It used to just be called football on the TicWatch Pro 5. Now on the Enduro, it's called soccer. But these differences, I would assume, and I would hope that these software differences that you're seeing here, at least for this application, would also show up eventually on the TicWatch Pro 5. Something you'll note that both of them do not have is the Google Assistant. So if you use the Google Assistant a lot on your watch, and unfortunately you don't have access to the Assistant on either of these watches. So for example, the Pixel Watch does, and even the Galaxy Watch has access to the Assistant, but not the Mobvoi watches here. So I am curious if there's other applications here that are improved or just updated compared to the previous version, just because the Tic Exercise was updated. So I'm curious to know if any other applications here are updated. Oh, I'm noticing that looks like Tic Oxygen and Tic Pulse and Tic Sleep and Tic Zen are not included. either not included or are they inside one of these? Let's see, maybe under Tic Health. Let's go to Tic Health over here, just see if there's a comparison or a difference here. Okay, so when you open it up, you can see you do get a bit of a different UI. So you can see your goals right away. You can see your goals here as well, but this is in a circular graphic versus just your statuses here. Calories, days climbed. Okay, so it is a bit different here as far as the design. So you can see here that each individual one does take up pretty much the whole section versus here you can quickly see at a glance a lot more as you're scrolling through. Again, looks a bit more modernized if you ask me compared to here, which tries to give you too much information at once, in my opinion. If I want to know more about some certain things, then obviously I'll click into it and be able to get more info. The last thing I noticed is the default watch face. So this one has something called Mystic Ridge versus Color Run on the Watch Pro 5. So it looks like you get a couple of new watch faces on the Enduro. So the default one is called Mystic Ridge, and then you get like 5 new ones. Yeah, so once you get to Color Run here, which is where this one starts at with the watch faces, you can see there's a couple of new ones available on the Enduro version. Again, will those become available on the previous version? I would assume so. Again, this is all software, so it would make no sense for them not to provide these new watch faces to the previous version. Now, who knows when that software update will come, because I will say they do take quite a bit of time to update the watches. I think I've only received 2 updates since I've been using the TicWatch Pro 5, and I've been using it since December, so it's been almost 6 months or 5 months now. So yeah, it takes some time. I'm not sure if they're a small team, so it could take some time for them to update stuff, but that's something to definitely just keep in mind overall when investing into a TicWatch Pro or a Mobvoi TicWatch, because they do take a bit of time for them to update. And you obviously saw earlier that they're only on Wear OS 3.5. And just to emphasize those updates, the TicWatch Pro 5 is on the October 5th security update from 2023. Versus the Enduro is on the February 5th, 2024 security update. So big gap there. I'm not sure what the most recent is, at least compared to the Pixel Watch, but it is definitely behind compared to the Enduro. And this is still even behind because it's on February and it's currently May as of recording of this video. So, and if I check right now, actually it just said right there, my watch is up to date. So yeah, updates are slow on the Mobvoi TicWatches, in my opinion. But again, there may be third-party reasons as to why these don't get updated as quick as the other watches that I've used. So I'm going to go ahead and just use the Enduro for a couple of weeks, 1 or 2, and then I'll come back and give you guys my first impressions, or more or less my review of the TicWatch Pro 5 Enduro. If it's any different compared to the TicWatch Pro 5, I can't imagine it's that big of a difference, other than right now the band does feel quite nice. I will say a lot nicer compared to the silicone band that was on this previous one. So yeah, I'll go ahead and come back and I'll see you guys in a few seconds. So it's now been 2-3 weeks now since I've been using the Mobvoi TicWatch Pro 5 Enduro. And to be honest, it's pretty much the exact same as the standard version. So I would personally recommend checking out my review of the standard version, because if you want a more in-depth look at the software and some fitness tracking and stuff like that, I would just check that out, because like I said, it's essentially the same thing. So first one I want to talk about is the pricing. MSRP, both of them are $350. Right now though, the standard version could be easily found for like $260, $230, depending on where you look at. So you could definitely find it a lot cheaper compared to the brand new one, the Enduro. So personally, me, just off the bat, I'll tell you that if you can find a standard version at a much cheaper price, just go for the standard version. The small tweaks from the Enduro version make absolutely no sense to pay an extra $100 or so just to get the newer version. So let's just hop into those small differences. Like I said at the beginning with the unboxing, you do get a different band. The band is definitely much better than the standard version one, but the good thing is that these are interchangeable. So you could easily just go on Amazon, buy a third-party one. It's a 24mm size, so you could just look for a 24mm size and replace the bands on the standard version. And voila, you have pretty much the exact same experience when it comes to comfort. Of course, it still is that big watch, so I personally don't have the biggest wrists or the smallest wrists out there, but it does run pretty big. So if you're not a fan of big watches, then this obviously isn't going to be your cup of tea. But like I said at the beginning, it definitely does make reading text on here. So whether it be messages or just the applications on the watch itself, it makes it a lot easier because of the bigger screen. And the buttons being just slightly bigger, honestly, make like no difference. Yeah, they're a little bit bigger, and if you have chunkier fingers, like maybe myself, it does make it a little bit easier to use them, but they're buttons, they work the same, so it honestly makes no big difference. Now, there is a little bit of a difference when it comes to the software implementation of the recents button. On the standard version, it was just a recents button. So when you clicked it, it would show you your recents applications. With the Enduro version, they now give you the option to be able to set that to pretty much whatever you want it to be. So it can be whatever application. I personally have it set to the media controls, and that's because there's no tile for the media controls, which is kind of annoying. So I have it set to that. So whenever I click that button and I'm watching a YouTube video on my phone or I'm listening to music, I can quickly skip, pause, and also control the volume. And with the new change in the glass being sapphire versus Corning Gorilla Glass on the standard version, my standard version has like no scratches on it. And if you're someone who is more outdoorsy, maybe you do a lot of rock climbing or you work in construction, that may be something you want to consider. But to be honest, the Corning Gorilla Glass has been holding up just fine. But furthermore, into the display, you still get the ultra low power display, which pretty much looks like a digital clock. Then you get your OLED display, which gives you all the smartwatch functionality. You can use an always on display with the OLED display if you want to do that as well. Personally, I've just been rocking the ultra low power display with the OLED combination. So whenever I'm not actually looking or using my watch, it'll just use the ultra low power display. And then when I interact with it, it'll auto switch to that OLED display. And going to the performance, the exact same chipset, that being a Snapdragon W5 Plus Gen 1 with 2GB of RAM and 32GB of onboard storage. So the watch pretty much performs just as it did with the standard version. Occasional choppiness and glitches, and that only really happens when you're switching from the essential mode to the standard mode. So other than that, I find that it's pretty snappy and pretty reliable for the most part when it comes to performance. And that kind of goes in with the software. It's for the most part very simple and very easy to use. Again, check out the video I did before on the standard version because I go more in depth about what you can do with the software. I also talked about it a little bit at the beginning. So software with Wear OS 2.5, it's still for the most part good. And tying in the software with the fitness tracking, it's again all very similar. You have the exact same sensors on both of them, and the only major changes that I personally noticed on my day-to-day were just the small UI overhauls that they did on some of the applications. So first on TicExercise, they've changed it up now so that the tile now shows you 3 predefined exercises. So you have the walking, the cycling, and the running, which I find annoying because on the previous version, on the standard version, the tile would update with your 3 most recently used workouts. So if you don't use the running and the walking and the cycling very often, the only one I use personally is the running. So it made the other 2 quick access exercises pretty much useless. And now once you go into the application, you now have a custom list. So you have to create this list yourself. It comes with the more popular ones predefined and preset up for yourself. But then you have to go in and add other exercises that you commonly use. While this is fine and dandy because you can obviously customize it to your own content, it does mean that if you want to do a one-off exercise that you've never done before, you have to go in and add it first to your list before you can start the exercise. It's a very minor inconvenience because it just adds one extra tap and click. But that wasn't the case on the standard version. On the standard version, you had 3 different options as far as how you wanted to customize that list. You can use a standard default predefined list that TicWatch had set up, or you could have it set so that it shows you your exercises with the most usage or your most recently used exercises. And I personally prefer the last 2 because of the fact that it's auto. So I don't have to go in and add it to anything or then have to go remove it or anything like that. It's just automatic. It auto just does it based on what I have previously used or used the most. I also noticed that in the settings, they've removed the option for performance mode, which would allow you to have the GPS run more continuously versus at longer intervals. So this would give you better tracking when it comes to maybe your runnings or cyclings when you're using your GPS. So I'm not sure if they've moved that to a different setting section, but it's no longer there in the TicExercise settings. And speaking of the GPS, it does take a couple seconds for it to connect whenever you start an exercise that can use GPS tracking. And there have been a couple times where I've been impatient, so I just ignored it and just started my run without waiting for the GPS to connect. And when I did that, there were a couple runs where it just completely got my distance and I guess speed completely wrong because it said I ran a mile in 4 minutes on one of my runs, which is, I mean, don't get me wrong, I know I'm fast. Like, I'm a pretty speedy guy, but there's no way I ran a mile in 4 minutes. The last thing I noticed was that the Tick Health now combined a couple of other applications that the standard version had, which was like Tick Oxygen, Tick Pulse, and Tick Sleep. That is now all integrated into the Tick Health app itself. Everything is just under one app. So it was pretty inconvenient to have to go through each different application on the standard version because they were all laid out into their own application. But otherwise, there are no other differences when it comes to what kind of things you can track. Like I said, all your metrics will be there. They're exactly the same, except now it's all under one application. Now I want to hit on the battery life because I did notice that in their marketing, they now claim 90 hours of battery life. And that may be true for certain use cases, but for me personally, I experienced roughly 2 days, 2 full days to maybe 2.5, 3 days if I'm lucky. So that's definitely well under the 90 hours. But that's mainly because I do use Spotify and then connect Bluetooth earbuds and then also use the GPS tracking when I go for my runs, which typically lasts about 30 minutes or so. So that may be pulling the battery a bit more compared to just standard usage. And like I said, I do use the ultra low power display. So with my usage, like I said, it's not quite that full 90 hours. But for me, overall, battery life is still very good though compared to other smartwatches. Like my Pixel watch only lasts me just about a day. My Samsung watches, if it's the Pro, like the 5 Pro or Watch 5 Pro or Pro 5, I forget what it's called. That one tends to last me about a day to 2 days. The Classic would die in a day as well. And then like the smaller ones definitely would not last me more than a day. So as far as battery from when it comes to a smartwatch on Android side, this watch definitely does the job. And the Enduro also still uses the exact same charging connecting pin, and it charges just as fast as the previous standard version did. So it takes just about an hour or so. So not only does this big old battery, I think it's like a 628 million battery. I'll put the number here just in case I mess it up. But even though it's a big battery, it still charges pretty quick, which is again a lot faster compared to the competition with my other Android smartwatches. So this takes about an hour or so, and if you were to charge for a half hour, you still will get just about like, I don't know, 60 to 70% battery life. So honestly, you don't have to worry about battery with this watch because personally, I would charge when I'm showering. So with those 15-20 minutes I take the shower, this will probably be topped up to 100% by the time I'm done. So battery life is no issue when it comes to this watch. So in the end, the Enduro is definitely still a solid watch. It's still a good hardware piece here, and I would definitely recommend this to most people, but the software. The software is the biggest Achilles heel when it comes to it, and not because it's bad software, but because of the software support. So they tend to be behind, as you can already tell from this video, in Wear OS version. So they're currently still, like I said, on Wear OS 3.5, and Wear OS 5.0 is at some point going to come out this year, and who knows when we'll even see Wear OS 4.0. And not to mention, they are planning to bring down some of those changes from the Tech Exercise and Tech Health app down to the standard version, but they haven't given me an official date as to when. So that's still TBD. Except for the watch faces. They did say that the watch faces will not be coming down to the previous version, which is kind of odd because it's still software. But either way, that's one thing to keep in mind when looking into one of these watches is the software support. It may not be as quick as some other brands, so Pixel and Samsung. So you will be a little bit behind when it comes to that experience. But if you just want a solid watch that provides you the great fundamentals and gives you everything you need, this is honestly a good purchase in my opinion. But make sure you get it at a good sale. And also just get the one that's currently the cheapest. Currently right now, like I said at the beginning here, is that this is currently priced at around $260, $230. So it is much cheaper than $350 of the Enduro. I would either wait for the Enduro to go on sale or just get whichever one is cheapest. So hopefully this video was helpful. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and peace.